It is really confusing. In our childhood years, dictate how we operate in our later years, whether it's in business, whether it's having deep beliefs that get in the way of us thriving in our life. And I couldn't get anyone on board. And then I had a moment, well, what if I became the vehicle? Like you're saying, what if I became the currency? Somehow that's how Dr. Phil ended up in my life. I would never have thought that's how. I didn't want to be a speaker. I thought, this is what we do often when we feel like we're not very good at something, is we look at other people and we compare ourselves. Sometimes I was looking at speakers and I was like, God, they're so cheesy.
You a Kanye fan? Yeah, I think you need some help. You might need to come to Coach Mike.
No, I don't do that anymore.
I know. You would make an exception for Kanye?
No, absolutely not.
You're listening to the Radcast. If it's radical, we cover it. Here's your host, Ryan Alford.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the latest edition of the Radcast. I hope everyone's out there is doing well. We appreciate all of our audience and be ready to be transformed, my friends. We've got Mike Bayer on the show today, two-time New York Times bestselling author, transformational coach, founder of Cast Centers. What's up, brother? Welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Feeling pretty rad today.
Hey, you got to. You're on the Radcast.
Yeah.
So what's been going on, Mike? How are things going?
Things are good. It's always a matter of how we look at life day to day and how we practice different things that keep our head on straight and hopefully not let it roll down the hill,
No kidding. I've had a few celebrity life coaches and things like that. Had Tim Story on. I don't know if you're friends or know Tim very well, but anyway, I know you've got an extensive background. I want to get into that. I want to talk about a couple of the books, but maybe let's just start for, you're on TV a fair amount. I know people are probably familiar with the name and your likeness and all that, but let's give everybody a little bit of your background and, building to today, man.
Sure. Yeah. And it's, I kind of avoided and I still avoid the title of a, celebrity life coach. I've been trying to call myself everything under the sun. And then when you try too hard, you end up with these titles that don't even make sense anyways, but we'll get into that. But I grew up in Orange County, California. I'm the youngest of three. Grew up in a family where basketball was a big sport. I'm 6'5" today, and I'm the shortest male in the family. And so was very driven towards basketball. I never did well in school. I got held back twice. Kindergarten, which I don't recall thinking I was dumb when I got held back, but in 8th grade, I got held back. And they said it was for sports. But I didn't do well in school, and I went to this high school called Mater Dei High School, which is a big powerhouse football and basketball school. And I had dreams that I was going to play, college basketball, and I don't know, one day get married and I guess have kids and go to Disney World in Orlando, and then maybe
American dream.
Take that trip to Hawaii once a year. But the problem for me was I couldn't get turned on by girls, and I didn't know why. And I thought, well, I haven't hit puberty yet. So once I hit puberty, I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm growing hair on my arm. I remember when we first grow our first hair on our chest or face, we're like, yeah, man, I'm becoming a man. But for me, I, for whatever reason, just wasn't that into women. And I thought that eventually, as we get older, we suddenly get really attracted to the opposite sex. But I found that I was not into it. So I kept trying to force myself to hook up with women who were very attractive, and it just didn't feel good. And I didn't even know what being gay was or anything like that. I literally knew of the Village People and the TV show, or at the time there was RuPaul, and I was both of those two existences. I wasn't that bonded with. And so I just thought I was weird. I thought I was very weird. And, so I overcompensated with, going with the homecoming queen to the high school dance and captain of the basketball team and vice president of the school. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was doing drugs, and I was doing a lot of drugs, and I love drugs. And I don't necessarily think because I hated myself for being gay is why I did drugs. I just loved getting high. And I started doing that at a young age. And so I would go straight from, playing in a basketball game to going to a rave. And eventually I went to play college basketball at Fordham in the Bronx. And I went back in the closet. Like, I graduated from high school. I had a fake girlfriend who basically I would have. Her name was Heather. And back then MySpace started to develop. And Heather ended up meeting a guy on our football team. And suddenly Heather, he's like, hey, I thought Mike was your boyfriend. And she's like, no, Mike's gay. And so I was outed then. I went to New York. I did not go out and play basketball because I felt like I wanted to be free. And I did not do well in school. And I eventually found myself for several years doing crystal meth. Stay up for a week at a time. Found myself about 90 pounds less than I am now. Picking up my skin, believing I was possessed by the devil. And I kind of had these moments of desperation. And I thought, a lot of people do this. Like, we all know people like this that are like, I'm getting sober. That's the last time I'm going to drink like that. And then you see them a month later and they're like, no, I'm just doing wine. I'm not doing the hard stuff. Or I just quit out weed or whatever it is. And so I didn't know how to stop. And eventually at 22 years old, I went to treatment for the final and last time. And I've been sober over 19 years. And I started working in this profession of mental health. I've owned a treatment center for over 15 years. And it went from me working in crises with addicts and alcoholics to eventually coaching and helping artists, entertainers. And it keeps unfolding. And I know it's a really long, short version, but that's kind of my story.
It is fun. And I mean, a lot to unpack there. Do you think, I have friends that are gay and like, I'm not, but I can relate to just discomfort in my life and uncomfortability. And I can only imagine the times 1,000, whatever that might be. I mean, it sounds like you had a different experience than some people I've heard. Like you thought the switch was just going to come on. It didn't sound like you were necessarily running from something you were aware of as much as you just thought, okay, I'm going to eventually be like everybody else.
Yeah, like I thought this is like part of the progression of like growing up.
That's interesting. I've never heard it. I mean, it makes 100% sense because it seems like everyone, I assume it's their journey and their truth, it's like they just, I don't know, they say they.
Well, I was like, why the hell am I gay?
Yeah.
Like if I don't want to be, can't I just like, and the girls were so attractive that I got together with, but it would be like you making out with an attractive dude. You probably would hate it.
Yeah, I wouldn't enjoy it. I'm attracted to women.
If you had to, imagine.
But I can't. But you know what? I'm smart enough and open-minded enough to know like the reverse of that, and knowing that how you would, you know what I mean? That you must have felt, how awkward or like, okay, like I'm not like. Again, I'm a very open-minded person, but I'm like, wow, that would be so terrible. I can relate to what you went through. It's like. But unfortunately, we've grown up in a world that's just starting to wrap their head around, being open-minded to how other people are. In some ways, we're getting better. In some ways, we're getting worse, right?
Yeah, and I'm different in the way too, where like I could be friends with someone who's anti-gay marriage.
Yeah,
like I just think like opinions are like noses. We all have them, right? And it's just being gay is like one description of me in terms of 10,000 descriptions that we all have. It's just that was a very painful, awful part of my life. And I share that just because it's just a part of my story, you know. But I'm friends with all sorts, as I was telling you before the podcast, all sorts of different types of people. And but it is really confusing. In our childhood years, you know, dictate how we operate in our later years, whether it's in business, whether it's having deep beliefs that get in the way of us thriving in our life. Unless we really go back and look at kind of what happened and connect some dots, we end up just creating that same fabric, but with different characters as we get older.
Yeah. Do you think that you're obviously starting the CAS centers and the treatment centers, and I mean, was that, it had to have been fueled by your own experiences, right? I mean, so I for sure, like I got sober, I was a counselor, then I did interventions for many years, and then I wanted to create a place where in the psychiatric or psychological world, there's something called I think it's the DSM-5 now, and everything is a diagnosis. Well, a big reason why there's diagnoses is two-part. One is so that people can have a roadmap potentially. So if you're labeled as, let's say, chemically dependent, that they can look at the different criteria and go, you are a drug addict or you're an alcoholic. And the same thing applies for so many different types of issues, anxiety disorders, personality disorders, and so forth. The other is so that insurance, you fill out on the form and you say, this is their diagnosis, so that insurance will pay. Because if there's no diagnoses, insurance won't pay for it. And so what I've kind of realized was we were getting dictated by the insurance world. They were dictating like length of stay and how people could get help. So I wanted to create a program that helped people with everything from depression, anxiety, addiction, or they could all be on their own islands. And so that's kind of what my vision was when I got sober. Because the place I went, you just basically were like, yes, I'm a drug addict and my life has become unmanageable. But like all the other underlying issues were kind of just, we're going to deal with that later. And years later, I just had to go to years of therapy. So, so you're trying to treat the whole problem and not just the top line. Not no one's addressing the underlying. It's just the top line.
Yeah, and people suffer a lot, and families spend a lot of money trying to figure out like how to help someone, and it's tough.
Is it, you know, and I want to talk more about the positive stuff that you're doing now, but I think it's important because I've always been curious, like for addiction like that, like if someone's addicted, whether it's alcohol or crystal meth or whatever it is, like, is it just an all or nothing thing? Like, is that why like you truly have to be, I mean, I don't know if do you even drink?
I haven't, no. So, but
is that a trigger? Like, is that the problem? Is like, there's just no, it's all or nothing?
No, I think, I also don't like cauliflower. And I haven't had cauliflower in a long time. Now, cauliflower is not going to lead me to potentially a situation that is very dangerous.
You might eat broccoli with it. Oh, right. Green beans are coming next.
Right. People are like, you haven't had that flash fried cauliflower. I'm like, that thing looks like a funky ass root, and you know that I don't want to eat it. It doesn't taste good. It has no flavor.
Yeah.
I don't care, all you cauliflower lovers out there, you know. But anyways, the point for me, like, recovery is a loose garment and everyone has to find their fit. And I'm very much a believer in people figuring out authentically for themselves what makes sense. Some people, they went through a tough period. Other people, it's like they got that personality where it's all or nothing. For me, it's just not worth it. Like having a glass of Merlot, like the reality is, to me, even though I'm an addict and alcoholic, I never really loved the taste of alcohol. Like, I am always amazed that people are like, oh, it tastes so good when they swirl around their wine. I'm like, it's a little bitter. They kind of like, I guess it looks fabulous, but it's just some fabulous way to say you're getting effed up, kind of like, or buzzed. But I know people who do really love it.
I love wine. So yes, I'm one of those. I'm a wine not connoisseur, but I have probably 700 bottles in my house.
Well, and probably for you, there's a whole ritual to the bottle of wine, right?
Yes.
It's like you probably have certain glasses. You're not drinking out of the red cups with that one bottle, right?
Not unless I'm at a tailgate. But I'm not a snob. But when I'm at home, I'm drinking out of my favorite glass. Yes.
Right. You have your favorite glass, and you probably have a spot where you want to enjoy it and an activity, right? Like it's a thing. It's a ritual, and I think that for a lot of people, it can be a phase. But the challenge is a lot of people think it's a phase, and then they completely lose it. And so I think it's really understanding for oneself what is that line. And, they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And a lot of people who should not be drinking at all keep doing it over and over again. The typical alcoholic, like I'll use these labels, doesn't get sober for about 25 years. So by the time they start drinking, till about 25, maybe 30 years later, they don't really reach that point where they have to do much because maybe of health issues, consequences. Now, some end up in trouble a lot sooner, but when you do some of these other drugs, like I'm grateful I did crystal meth, because if I drank, it would have taken a long time to get sober. With meth, you're such a disaster that I'm like, oh God, it got me sober at 22,
Yeah, went downhill quick. Instead of a snowball building, it's like an anvil dropping off the mountain.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, let's talk about what you've been doing. I know I'm not the celebrity whore or anything, but I do think it's interesting that it's just led you there. I mean, what you did all of this, it had nothing to do with who or why you did it for. It was more the greater good, your influence. You've gone through it. You want to help others. You want to treat the whole problem, not part of the problem. But what got you into, call it the celebrity circuit, entertainment circuit?
Yeah. Well, the first few living in LA, you're just bound to work with different entertainers, and I think the first kind of big family I worked with was the Osbournes. This is like over 10 years ago. I did Kelly Osbourne's intervention. I went on her podcast. That's why I can talk so freely, whereas a lot of people I can't. And I worked with that family, and that was kind of my first taste. And I was young, and then what would happen is I started working with different people who are in crises, like bad crises. They wouldn't go on stage on a tour. And the consequence for them personally was huge financially if they did not deliver and perform. And so I would go out, and people through word of mouth would start saying, oh, you got to call Mike Bair. And then over time, it went from like working with crises to working with bands that were breaking up or kind of reinventing. And then after that, it kind of went towards people who had public breakups. And then it started getting into record labels calling me to help figure out how to help someone live in their art, like what mattered. How would their brand be put out in the world that was authentic? How do they express themselves? How do they express themselves creatively on a music tour? And it just is like evolved. I'm one of those guys that like, I love new passions in self-help after I feel like I've kind of reached my own measure of mastery in a certain arena. So I haven't, I don't personally work. I wouldn't be the guy today that's if I got a call for someone who needed to get sober in the middle of music tour, I'm not flying out anymore. I did that for years. I'm much more geared now these days. So I had no intention of ever doing television. And I met Dr. Phil 3 years ago, and he asked me at a lunch if I wanted to go on an episode. And I never realized that I would have the ability to help more people by going on a big platform. I always was kind of like, well, why would someone want to go on television? Even though I worked with these people, like I understood it from music, I understood it for actors, but I kind of just didn't want to be seen. And I didn't want to speak at events. I didn't want attention. And then he asked me to go on his show, and then fast forward, I've been on maybe 40 or 50 episodes. He's like, you need to write a book. And then suddenly he flew with me to Dallas, and he's like, this is your agent and you need to deliver it in 4 months. Like, he's been my mentor, and that was never on my vision board or in my thinking of oh, this is that next phase. But I feel like when you keep doing great stuff and you're really passionate about what you do, even better circumstances come into the mix when you're not trying to control it or force it. And that's just been my experience. It's help someone as much as I can. Out of that just comes other opportunity.
Hey, you want to fix yourself, you fix others. Firmly believe that,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's true. I mean, you got to fix yourself to some degree first, but yeah, it's the golden rule. Treat others as you'd have them treat you. But, I hear you say that, it's funny. I preach attention is currency, like with brands, and I preach attention is currency like that. I have a t-shirt that's literally not because I want attention, but with attention becomes power because you have awareness in more people. And if you're wanting to do good and you do good in life and you're leading a life like you're living and helping others, it can be amplified by that attention. And it sounds like you started to embrace that.
Yeah, and how this all came about is I started going to Iraq because I was going to open up mental health clinics with the government over there in Kurdistan. And I went out there alone the last time, and I thought that I would get all these entertainers and celebrities to rally behind me to do a really great cause and open up the first ever mental health therapy center in a refugee camp in Duhok. And I came back and I couldn't get anyone on board. The publicists were not into it because Americans don't care about Kurdistan. For, if it's a fireman, sure, police or some other things in the US, but they don't realize and what goes on out there is horrifying what I saw out there. Women whose husbands were lined up and just massacred in front of them, and daughters sent off to Syria as sex slaves, sons forced to join ISIS. And it's real. And there's millions of them. And it's the craziest thing. And there's no therapy. And in that culture, you don't talk about it. So this is my calling. I'm done working with these entertainers. I'm going to go do this in Kurdistan. Then I went out there. I was funding it myself and starting to launch it. And I couldn't get anyone on board. And then I had a moment, and this is about 3.5 years ago, I was like, well, what if I became the vehicle? Like you're saying, what if I became the currency? And that's how Dr. Phil ended up in my life. I would never have thought that's how, but he has the #1 daytime television show, and he's taken me under his wing, and my reach is so much bigger where I'm hoping that I'm able to do some really cool projects. And it doesn't have to be in Kurdistan, but it kind of forced me to realize no, Mike, if you want to do this stuff that you're really passionate about, you have to have a little bit of currency, like you say.
Yep. And, growth is always starts with discomfort,
Yeah.
And
you're right.
And you didn't want the attention. You didn't want all of that. You wanted to do good. You want to do all that. But then you said, okay, well, attention brings opportunity, brings more awareness.
What growth has come out of discomfort for you?
Me personally, I've started 2 businesses. The first one was fairly a colossal failure. Both were, it's not comfortable being an entrepreneur, but the second one's been a bigger hit. The first one didn't even hit the charts. It fizzled fast. And then here, my agency, Radical, we're one of the fastest growing digital agencies in the Southeast. So we're 3 years old. So it's been, but it's been uncomfortable pushing, to grow and to make decisions and do everything that it takes to be an entrepreneur. So,
and what's the biggest realization you've had about yourself in this?
Probably that I had what it takes to do it. You have a lot of, I'm a confident guy, but you have self-doubt, when you start something like this. And I had grand ambitions, and, we're just getting started. We've got a lot of green pasture ahead. But you just, after the first kind of failure, you're like, can I really do this? Do I have what it takes to lead people to, I know how to sell, I know how to do marketing. I've done it for 20 years for some of the largest brands in the world. But starting your own company and everything that it takes to do that logistically, it's taken time, and
it's tough. I still struggle with, I have a psychologist working for me and a team, a bunch of people. And like, even yesterday, I start beating myself up that like, I'm not being a good enough boss. I'm not, or I'm avoiding conversations that are tough, or I'm projecting my own stuff on other people. And like, it's uncomfortable because you can feel really alone in it. You can talk to the people who work with you, but that's really not appropriate. And that's why I have a call with someone on Sundays who's a friend of mine, where we just check in every Sunday about life and what's going on in our brains. Cause sometimes we think, as a leader, we have to figure it out or have all the answers. Yeah. And we don't know what we're doing. It's all good too, though.
That's right. No, I can relate. People look to me, we have about 20 people, about 10 to 12 here in this office, and then some spread around the country, around the world even. We're fairly international as far as our help and some of our clients. But you're the boss, so you have all the answers, right? Well, yeah, I'm opinionated, but I don't have all the answers.
Yeah, it's nonstop. I found even with public speaking, I didn't want to be a speaker. I thought, this is what we do often when we feel like we're not very good at something, is we look at other people and we compare ourselves. And it's not that we compare ourselves necessarily and go, God, they're so good. Sometimes I was looking at speakers and I was like, God, they're so cheesy. Like I don't want what they have. I just don't want what I have. You know what I mean? And it's like, but that's a way of trying to diminish ourselves or not feel like we're good enough. And then suddenly you start speaking enough, and then you're like, well, I actually kind of do like it, because we're afraid. When we think we're not good at something, we shut down. And the reality is, like, sometimes, like you're saying, the discomfort is when we grow. And that resonates with me, because it's a good reminder of,
well, I tell people, like, if it's not hurting a little bit, you're not going anywhere great. Like, it's kind of like a trip. Like, if I was going to get in the car, you're in LA, I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. If I was going to come there and I didn't have a plane or something like that,
you would have to wear a mask.
I'd have to wear a mask. At the border, they'd stop me and put a mask on. But I'd have to drive all the way there, a long way to go. But, the value that you gain from the, all of that, because I know how much you would teach me. We'd get together in your beautiful studio and, have a wonderful experience. But it'd take me, 3 days to get there in a car, It takes time. And same thing with building brand and building companies. Like, everybody wants everything yesterday. We live in such a immediate gratification world.
Yeah. And I think the scariest thing for an entrepreneur is if they don't reflect and look at themselves. Because I do think some people just aren't cut to go lead. Like, they're not, because they don't have self-awareness. But at the same time, I think that you're right. Like, part of the growth and part of the pain of it all, even if it's a little bit, is expected.
Let's talk about your books. How's that been? Writing, it's different, talking and all that. Like, how was that journey for you?
Painful.
It's hard to write.
very difficult, especially when you have learning disabilities and dyslexia, and you've also never had a vision for it. And the thing is, I got a really big advance for my first book, which is pretty rare.
That's rare these days.
Yeah, it's already in 18 languages and made New York Times a bunch of times. My first book, and it's also because of the platform. I mean, it's very hard. What I think a lot of people don't realize when they write a book is, I want to say something like, it's like over 95% of books never sell more than a few thousand in its lifetime. And sometimes people don't realize how challenging it is to have, there's so many moving parts and pieces. It's not just about writing an exceptional book. It's also about your distribution. It's also about like who's on your team, how are you going to pre-sale it, social media. There's so many factors, but the process of writing the book, the first book, I'm glad I have a body of work where I can help someone for $17. And it's the same thing I was doing with people that were paying me tens of thousands of dollars. If someone's driven to work on themselves, it is the work of my past, 18 years that I was able to put into my first book, which was called Best Self. And in that book, it's really geared around helping someone realize who they authentically are. And a lot of my stuff has creative exercises. So in that book, you're really about finding out who your best self is. Like my best self's a wizard. There's like a wizard behind me. There's a wizard on my arm. That's who I bring into the mix when I really want to be authentic. And we also help people figure out their anti-self and what area needs to be worked on today. And it was really, I should say I'm beyond grateful to write books. I have written 2 books now, and the other is called One Decision. That's the most recent book. It's all about how one decision can change your life and helping you sort today what is that one decision and what you need to do. I'm also like writing a script with the showrunners of the show Silicon Valley. They did King of the Hill. That's a comedy that's kind of in the mental health space. I'm trying to create. I love creating. I think that the book process, it's a grueling process. It is have you written a book?
I'm writing one.
Oh, you are? Where are you at in it?
Chapter 2. I guess.
Do you have like a team helping you?
Nope. I'm going to take one on. But I'm trying to write enough to then get help with it. Maybe I don't know if that's the right approach, but I don't know.
Well, I find it's really helpful to kind of start off my process. And especially if it's your first book, is start off with the chapters and kind of like the first, like you said, the first chapter. The publishers are wanting a lot of the work to be done. And it's really there's like 5 big publishers. I mean, what is your motivation for writing a book?
It's marketing. I mean, I've been marketing and advertising for 20 years, and I've seen, everybody's a YouTube expert now, but it's, my experience with the brands that I've worked with, and then my own theories on marketing, branding, and all of that. So I've got a couple working titles. One's Forever Date, and another one's Lifetime Value, but it's so
the goal of the book is to help people understand how to market better?
Yes. In a world where we're now being dominated by performance marketing, people that are trying to make a buck today, and the value of building brand and how to do that properly. So a few other anecdotes, but and it's in the other working titles, like you've probably heard of lifetime value, like if you've ever heard it, that's a common term in marketing for, like, you want a customer to stay with you for a long time, because people, they calculate that the lifetime value of a customer. Like, an easy way to do it is like if you're a cell phone company and you pay, and Ryan Alford's been with Verizon for 18 years, and the lifetime value that I am, they can add that up, right? And they can estimate what a lifetime is. And the working title is lifetime. I've got value with a strike through lifetime loss, which is what the other side of that coin of not taking care of your customer, but more the depth of that because they tell 10 other people.
Right.
And the exponential impact of not taking care of customers combined with, how to.
So really it's for business owners, people in marketing, sales, entrepreneurs.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah. So probably a year away. I'm being realistic. I might get a wild hair. I mean, I'm writing. I have my little note app on my phone, so I start typing in it. Thoughts. I think I have the chapters all done, like the names of what the sections are and all that. But we'll see. So first time I've talked about it on the podcast. Hey, it took Mike Bayer to bring it out on the podcast. I don't think I've even talked about it.
Well, I think a lot of people have thought about it or just starting, and I think it's great to just have expectations. I find it's the most helpful to think about how am I helping someone the most with what I'm delivering, and have little to no expectation of how it sells.
Yes.
That feels better.
And I'm doing it for me. Like I think there's a lot of value in it. Not that age has it, everybody's writing a book, like 24-year-olds trying to teach me how to be, the best version of me. And like, maybe he can be, we can all learn something from someone, but I don't know. I felt like I needed more credibility. I've done it for 20 years and I feel like I needed more experience. And now I feel more credible to, document like what should happen. And I'm doing it for me more than if it sells 20 copies, I don't care, like.
Cool.
We'll
say that now.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how much I have to put in it, right? You're like, yeah, right. So you talked about it a little bit, with the calls you do, but I was always curious. I'm always curious with someone like yourself, you're a transformational coach. You've got these centers you're doing for others. You took care of yourself, that anvil back in 22 that dropped on your head or whatever, or dropped quickly. But now, how does someone like you take care of your own mental health?
Yeah, I think that's a good, because the desperation often creates, a fury of, I need to do this and this. I do jujitsu 4 to 5 times a week. I'm entering actually my first jujitsu tournament next weekend.
Nice.
And I start at 40 years old, and I'm 41 now, and I love martial arts, and it's a way I find that like really intense exercise where I'm in the moment helps me a lot with my mental health. Like I mentioned, I also have a weekly call with a peer of mine, where we talk about life and talk about what's going on. If I'm really struggling, I'll call and get a therapist for like a few weeks. If I'm really in a dark spot, which that hasn't happened in a while. And I'm always trying to learn, and I'm always trying to evolve. A woman told me, her name's Diane Poole, when I was just starting off working in this industry, she goes, Michael, it's grow or go. And that kind of life is always growing, and you either have to evolve and get with it or you don't. And so I try the best I can. I try to meditate when I can. I try to get a good night's sleep. I try to eat healthy. And I ask for help. I think asking for help from others helps a lot with our own mental health. And I also am committed to not being a victim. Like, the last thing I want to do is to feel sorry for myself or think for 1 second that I don't have something good enough. And you look at, and this is part of the thing, I've traveled all over the world. It really helps your mental health when you realize how lousy it is for some people on this planet. And when you start to go to refugee camps and you start to see what's really going on and how much freedom we have in this country, how much opportunity we have in this country, how much greatness we have in this country. That seems to help pull myself out a little bit when I'm, feeling sorry for myself.
Makes a lot of sense. Hey, and I love the grow or go. It's kind of like use it or lose it.
Yeah, exactly.
Same type of mindset. What are some of the, techniques? Like all your videos are out there. We're gonna tag all that. People will be able to, they can go check you out. They've probably heard of you, probably seen you. But are there a couple you talked about it, like common techniques that you use, with people in trying to get them in the right mindset? I know you've got a lot of different acronyms and all those kind of things, but is there any of your favorites?
Well, I find it's really helpful to help someone figure out who their best self is. I say that because our parents give us names, and then kind of the world tells us who we are on this planet, and we don't take a lot of time to really take a step back and be like, all right, well, let's just say I didn't have this name Ryan, and I'm just feeling this vibe. Like I got this vibe and this energy of who I am authentically, and I like to help people create it. Sometimes they draw it, they sketch it, they have something. But that's being able to bring that part of themselves into every business meeting, bring that into when they're performing, I find is a really helpful tool. I also like to help people figure out their anti-self, that part that gets in the way, the part that we can't stand about ourselves. Like mine's a male witch named Angelos. And because I think male witches don't have a lot of friends. I've never seen them in movies with friends. The male witch is always the loser. So you add a little bit of humor to that part of you that normally you hate. And I find that when you can do that, it alleviates some of that stress and pain. And so I like to create with people. I like people to kind of know for themselves that they're capable if they bring this part of themselves into the meeting. And I find that it can help people conceptualize, if someone is going to have a difficult conversation and they're like, I'm really worried about I would say, well, what would your best self do? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, well, my best self would say A, B, C, and D. And I'm like, there's your answer. So, I mean, it seems overly simple, but it works. And I think it's important to get centered. And I think it's like when I say centered, it's important to like regulate the body, and get your nervous system to chill and to take time just to be in the moment. And it's simple and breathing, but we have to be reminded to do the most simple thing that literally allows us to just get back into the moment. And so a lot of what I try to do is help someone get in the moment and figure out like how to show up authentically as themselves. I mean, the way I write, I teach people how to do that. That's authentic for them. But it's, I'm an exercise guy. Like I've had clients I've worked with for a few years where every day I'm creating a new exercise for them. And so it really just depends on what is going on for that person, I
love it. Did you say that you're retiring from working with celebrities and entertainers, or is it just, is it?
Yeah, I'm just not that interested. I think like it's, I either think that I don't feel good working with celebrities and also growing my public brand. Like, I don't know. There feels like there's a conflict for me a little bit. What I mean by that is like, when you're growing your own brand, when I work with someone, I sacrifice almost everything in my own life. And that's why I've been successful, is I'm not thinking about myself in it at all. I also don't want to be in another dressing room. Like, I don't want to be around another space where people are awkward around other humans because they have this perceived power. Now, that does happen still in television or whatever. But I just like, I'm not attracted to working with famous people because I did that for so long, and I don't see what value there is in my life.
Hey, something to be said for that. What is the Mike Bayer brand then? We're a marketing
Coach
podcast.
Mike. Yeah, so they call me Coach Mike.
Coach Mike. I mean, Coach Mike.
Yeah.
But what's the
Who am
underneath the name? What's the brand? What do you want people to know? Like, if there's like, I don't know, you can have a couple sentences. I won't leave you. I won't make you.
You tell me.
Yeah, no. But like,
what's mine?
Yeah.
I think my brand is straightforward, creative, fun, serious when I need to be, and authentically myself, like not copying. Like if someone goes to my social media, half the time you wouldn't even know that I'm like a coach, Like I just posted a photo of me in a freaking Speedo in Rio. Like, I don't care. And I used to get a lot of people being like, that's not professional. People can't take you seriously. And I'm like, I'm not looking for people to take me a certain type of way. Like, kind of put yourself out there. And I want to give other people permission to just like, you can have a kick-ass rockin' life by not conforming to what people think.
Amen. If I had we have a soundboard on our news episodes, and I think I need to bring it back for when guests are on, because I have this amen clapping sound. Like that would have won at least a few dings.
Yeah,
I love it. Look, I got memes on my. I don't take anything too serious. Like I'm like whatever.
Yeah. Like I think like people. I think there's like the online personality, right? And then there's who we are when we're on stage, or who we are when we're when I'm on TV. Now, on Dr. The difference is it's just a matter of how you're helping someone and who you're helping. Like I helped someone on Dr. Phil on Tuesday, who I don't think has smiled in years. And I was just smiling, my whole mouth was smiling because I was looking forward to making her eventually smile and maybe doing a follow-up show where I got this woman where you feel a different vibe on her. And so it gets exciting for me to figure out, like, how am I going to transform this woman's life? How am I going to over-deliver? And, I get confused, though. I mean, you're a marketing guy, and this is your expertise. I find that when I've had publicists that I've worked with, they're like, Mike, give me 5 tips to help someone with their depression. And I'm like, 5 tips? Like, first of all, like, are people really following these tips? Second of all, like, there's a huge disconnect. When people are really depressed, they're not going, where can I find those 5 tips? That person's like, do I want to kill myself? Do I like it's not even, the disconnect is so big between media and the reality of struggle. And I think that like, I sometimes struggle because I'm like, God, media and culture really has this belief, like no one cares about these celebrities talking about mental health. Like what I mean by that is it doesn't translate. Because someone who's struggling, really struggling, I mean, maybe it happens every now and then, no one has ever come to my center because they saw some promo on television or because of, Oprah's special on mental health with Prince Harry. That people today that are struggling and that are suffering, are like, they're so disconnected from entertainment. And right now there's this huge trend to talk about mental health and like entertainment. And I I'm on a tangent right now. I know. But
No, I get where you're going though.
There's a
it's
disconnect, and I don't know how to connect it.
Yeah,
you know?
like media and what drives clicks and what drives perceived attention isn't always what truly is helping those in need.
Right.
I think that's what
For sure.
It's like, and I can see the internal struggle that would bring with, being on TV, doing things to raise your attention, but wanting to do it real authentically and as you, but the struggle of pulling you to, well, can you talk about this? Can you do that? Because that's all the rage right now. Right.
Yeah, it's all the rage. And what I realized though for myself is like not to do it feels better to me, and to do it in my own way, because like I preach, when you do it your own way, eventually someone sees you. Like you reached out to me. I don't know if you would have reached out to me if I was just delivering tips and tricks, and you know what I mean? Like, so like it attracts the people you actually want to work with and get to know and develop a relationship with. And it can become tricky because sometimes we look at others and go, well, if I do it that way, then I'm going to get it. But I don't think that works, Yep.
Yeah. Copying. You're only the true. You are the true original. Copying someone else doesn't make it. Work. It takes people a long time to do that. But Mike, I know we've gone a little bit longer than planned, but this has been really interesting to me. I hope that was okay, and I really appreciate all the insights. You got like 2 minutes for me. We do a little section called Rad or Fad. I give you one keyword, and you tell me rad or fad.
And what does fad mean?
Fad, it's kind of like good or bad, but kind of like, or rad, or maybe truly a fad, like.
Okay. Do you just say rad or fad? That's it.
Yeah, you could add context. We've everyone seems to like to do it, so we're now allowing.
This is really exciting. This is very exciting.
First, online coaching, rad or fad?
Fad. Oh God. What kind of online coaching?
Everybody's an online coach, Mike.
Oh. God, online.
I really stumped you on the first one.
The only reason you stumped me is I think there's value.
Yeah.
But I think
there's a lot of posers.
Okay. It's rad, except it's a fad if they try to upsell you.
All right, no upsells. I'll think about that. I'm about to put out some marketing training, so I'll keep that in mind. No upsells. All right, this was on our new. We recorded we do a Friday, very topical new marketing and advertising news. We do them every Friday, and this one came on. You've heard of Flaming Hot, like chips and everything. That's like
Cheetos and all that.
Yeah, Cheetos. Flaming Hot Mountain Dew, rad or fad?
That's a fad.
Yeah. Drinking heat, like eating is like, oh my God. I was like, who comes up with this stuff? Instagram Reels, rad or fad?
Oh Lord. Sad.
Oh. Yes. What about TikTok?
It's a little rad.
Okay. All right. Now we're getting there.
Only because that's like worked for me.
But Yay.
But if it didn't, I did.
Yay. Kanye changed his name back to Yay. Rad or
That's
fad?
another one?
Yeah. Rad or fad?
You
Kanye fan? Yeah. He's changed his name back and forth. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, that's a fad.
I think he needs some help. He might need to come to Coach Mike.
No, I don't do that anymore.
I know. You wouldn't make an exception for Kanye?
No, absolutely not.
All right.
No, I would rather help the guy next door.
Cool.
Honestly, like I was on the phone last night for 2 hours with people and I'm helping them for free and it's so exciting. No, I don't care.
Yeah. Well, I'm coming to LA. I'm on the Wolf of Wall Street's podcast next month. Jordan Belfort going on as guest.
Let me know when you're out here.
Yeah, I'd love to grab lunch. And then I'm Spencer Pratt and Heidi Montag from the Hills. I don't know if you remember that. Seeing them.
Yep.
We do all their marketing and website stuff. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I'd love to catch up with you when I'm out there.
Yeah, let's do it.
I really appreciate you coming on, Coach Mike Bear. Tell everybody where they can find you, Mike.
Yeah, it's just Coach Mike Bear, like aspirin, on all social medias, coachmikebear.com. And then, that's it. They can buy, my books are on Amazon. It's my voice for the audiobook. But if I suggest getting the hardcover and doing the exercises. So
love it. Well, he just told you where to find you. Amazon for the books, Coach Mike Bear. Just Google Mike Bear. You're going to find this guy. I know you're there. You got to be in the search. If you're not at the top of the list, we'll get you there. We'll talk more about that.
Okay.
We really appreciate Coach Mike coming on. I'm Ryan Alford. You know where to find me, at Ryan Alford on all the platforms. We're at theradcast.com. Search for Mike Bear. You'll find all the highlight clips from this episode and many more. And we'll see you next time on the Radcast.